Debbie Walters, who is our secretary, to call the roll so you can see who answers to what name. If you haven't already met someone.
Dan.
Here.
I don't believe it. It's going to be one of those. Ray John.
Here.
Dick Fisher. Mary Brody. Here. Sherry Holmes. Joe Josephson. Lisa Parker. Jim Parsons.
Here.
Frank Reed.
Here.
William Sheffield.
Here.
Arlen Sturczewski.
We open with a public hearing.
We only brought half the crew, huh?
We've got about half our crew. I guess last night was much for a couple of us. But we're here. We passed out a little memo to you folks, and we do want to welcome you to this public meeting, which is for the residents of Girdwood Indian Bird and Portage. For the Charter Commission, we are in the process for the Anchorage area, and we are here to listen to your input concerning localized matters as well as the major items to which the Charter addresses itself, such as the form of government, type of districting, and so forth. As you know, a suit was filed last night stating that the Commission is illegally constituted. And we intend to continue our work, which really has been at a very fast pace and intense so far as we've gone, until we receive direction from the courts. We will welcome your input tonight, and as we're asking that you be limited to 5 minutes testimony, unless we can see that everybody can be heard in time and over a longer period of time. And I want to thank you for coming, and we'll be back after the first draft is closed. The first draft we hope will be ready for you within 10 days, I would say, Harlan?
If we keep on schedule.
Yeah. And we don't know what the results are going to be, but we've made some decisions already for the first draft. Any of those decisions are open to change, and will be, no doubt, some of them changed after the first draft is published. I think the first draft will be published probably in both papers and available to you. And we'd like to have from you folks anything that you care to say or ask us, or basically we'd like to have what you think the government should be and how it should be. So is there anybody here who would like to be heard? Versal?
Mayor Girdwood, I think one of the concerns concerning our people is that we will be the remote area, Anchorage area, and since we will be the only feel that the real challenge to the Charter Commission is to get some kind of governance if it is accepted. That the people definitely have an input to that body. And I know that the people that have a lot of money are doing input. Because I think that the individuals certainly really not been well represented. What I see in the papers of the reactions to the city council, or the borough said they want the borough. I've seen many times the large concerns can get changes in the exception policy, zoning and planning exceptions, and other exceptions. And if the small individual doesn't have an opportunity, a real good opportunity, in a unified government, then I don't think, if you can't show it to the people that have it, then I don't think they're going to be able to do that.
Bob, may I ask, have you any particular suggestion? I'll approach it from something we did the night before last. We passed on a section that was put in as an entry deal anyway, the community councils. Have you had any experience with them? Do you think it's at all something that would work?
I had no experience with the community council, but we had a very good community club here, which I think would be similar to the council. A group of interested people that take part in different activities of the local segment of the area. And it's really nice, except they don't have any power. And when the boroughs were being forced on the state of Alaska, the city of Griffin organized a third-class city to petition to be incorporated in the borough of Akron, Jamaica. And this is probably a big state too. And we incorporated to get in the Jamaica borough. But also at that time, it said that an incorporated city would have representation on the borough center. Of course, the laws have changed. So the local voice that we were trying to get at that time, a bunch of local people in a community club or a council or whatever they call it, was erased.
By the change.
And unless there was some legal power that these local councils would have, then I don't think they're going to be effective, because it's how that governing body would choose to vote. Are they going to recognize their voice from the hillside area, or turning it on where they have particular reasons that they don't want these zoning extensions taken, but there's a ruling power just listen to them, and they don't go with it. I think unless you have a legal power,
I was looking for the copy of it that we.
I could, if you like, pass just the wording that we have. I know that Mr. Miller knows about the Turning Arm Community Council, but we're suggesting wording that says community councils may be established to provide residents the opportunity for maximum community self-determination without infringing upon the rights of persons not represented by community councils. The legislative body by ordinance shall provide for the establishment, duties, and functions of community councils under powers the legislative body, and that would be the assembly, by ordinance shall provide for procedures to allow for negotiation between the local government and each community council with respect to sharing of rights and powers, and may provide for each community council to supervise the furnishing of services in an area. But it really sets a very broad framework if this is adopted and if we were to unify, so that the assembly, working with the communities, could really negotiate and set out the powers. It allows the flexibility to the future government to do the type of thing that you're doing. Right now, as you know, Mr. Miller, both the city and the borough have advisory community councils, which really in effect just gives you advance notice that certain things are going to happen and impact your area, so that you'll be aware of them and can participate. The framework is there, however, for say more to be done at the local level. But at least at this point, the Charter Commission we're trying to write a constitution type at this time, which doesn't put in all the specifics of the legislation.
I haven't read this, but it's got to be more than permissive. Because right now, as a first-class city, we are not given privilege of a lot of things that we should have to the borough. We have this subdivision government out here, which is not really going fast. We have never, as a third-class city or a first-class city, ever been given the opportunity to officially review subdivision plans or our signatures. So it's got to be more than permissive. It's got to be,
It does set forth that they shall provide for the procedures. Shall provide for the procedures to allow for negotiations between the local government and each community council with respect to sharing of rights and powers, and may provide for each community council to supervise the furnishing of services in that area or in an area. But it does say it. They shall provide.
Mr. Chairman, Bob, I think you folks can understand that if we had an area within the core of the city somewhere that decided that it wanted to furnish powers, it would be more questionable about allowing them to furnish all of their powers and have the main government have to move around them when they're furnishing the powers all around them. It'd be a heck of a lot easier to allow you folks out here to have fairly near autonomy than it would be to allow a group of citizens anywhere in the middle of downtown to have that much autonomy without hurting the folks around it. And that's the reason for the wording as it is given in this.
Mr. Chairman, we just passed this community council session this week, and it's kind of a new concept in government throughout the country. And we haven't discussed it more than a couple evening meetings ourselves. There's been some research handed out to us. But I wonder, would you think that this kind of a negotiation would allow a place like Girdwood to perhaps even assume such things as police power?
I would think that it would, if they wished it. I would think it would allow them to do almost anything they wish, because there's very little that they can do, other than if they don't follow environmental quality standards, which is part he's trying to help us get to enforce, that could hurt the general area.
Mr. Chamberlain, I think it's very important to notice, though, in the wording that we have now, that we are not tying the hands of the legislative body. The trend, I think, in government throughout the country is to it gets bigger for some reason, so you can get the overall benefits of planning and some of the other things, but it has to also bring certain things back to the neighborhood level, and that's just what you're saying. But I think that has to be done with care. They're finding it has to be done with care, or you can end up with the kind of trouble that you got the big government to avoid, which was the proliferation of small units of government. And I think that whatever we write, we've got to leave the flexibility up to the legislative body to really adopt perhaps a plan taking into account the neighborhood and working with them, but that they do have the final power, and that if we set in the very specific things in the charter that said you will be treated this way and Eagle River Chuliak in another area way, you might really tie the hands of the government in time to come, and yet it provides, I think, the kind of a framework that you need down here. I had just one question, then I won't talk any further. On this subdivision, I know that the Planning Commission turned those down because we felt the holding tanks were the wrong way to go. Were you people ever noticed in this area? Well, you know, this is one thing now. If this were even under the community council ordinance there is now, you would have received notice. If you, let's say that the city of Girdwood were a community council, it would have received notice, and it's incredible to me that the city of Girdwood did not receive it.
Well, I think that even within the existing law, it should have been done.
I agree with you.
But, this is down the road. But we're kind of unhappy with that. And I envision the new government had complete power. And what the city of Girdwood would be donating to the new government would be at least $3 million worth of assets with no debt over utility bills per month. Now we're going to share the debts of both the borough and the city manager. And not that we don't use all the city streets and everything else that's in there, but still, as representing the city, I can't say that it's pretty unattractive to say we're going to combine the assets and the liability. If we go ahead and liability, we will have the assets. And the people here have direct man-to-man. All they got to do is have 6 people at the meeting, and they are one-to-one with us in anything that they want. And you get 6 people that go to the unified government, whether it be city council or borough assembly. And those 6 people are just a very small minority. I can't see that it's attractive at all. Our particular valley to go in, because if we got one guy that comes to our city council, we look at a heck of a lot. But if he comes in there and pushes one thing pretty hard, he's only 1 to 6. That's a pretty good ratio. And he's got a real good influence. And there's a lot of opportunity for self-determination in this small valley. And I'm not trying to shoot you guys down, but from my personal standpoint and from the city standpoint, it really doesn't look very attractive to us unless there is some type of opportunity guaranteed to the people in the remote areas. And as I say, Indians, they're involved in one of these remote areas. In 10 years, you're going to be actually a unified government, whether you unify or you don't. This is a real concept.
Bob, I don't know whether you have heard or not, but I think that last unit that the state refused to sign the fact. 7. I think the last unit, the state refused to sign the flag.
No, it's fine.
It is now? Last I heard, the state was refusing to sign.
For your information, two young ladies who just came in, Jane Anvick and Lisa Parker, they're both members of the commission.
Where were you, Jane?
This is Joe Joseph.
Bob, you started to answer what I was going to ask, Bob. I was going to ask if you could list the advantages and disadvantages of Girdwood and Indian being in a unified government. And you listed a couple of disadvantages, and I'd like for you to continue on if you can, if any more, and if there's any advantages, I'd like to hear those too, if you could.
As a unified government,
If you were in a unified government here, are there any advantages that you feel that this area would benefit from?
well, I'm not sure under a unified government just how it happened, but we felt way back when we incorporated as a city that the reason we incorporated was to be attached to the Aiken carrier. We utilized all our shopping and part of our entertainment, emergency needs, a lot of things. We're dependent on Aiken, and we use Aiken, and we wanted to be attached to it. So we incorporated so we could do that. And yet I think that generally the Alaskans have been identified as people that like to make their own determination. So as long as we are physically separated by acres from all those rocks and through them, we're never going to be right in there. There's no way. It's always going to be controlled. We benefit from all the services the borough provides. Never complain over the taxes and assessments and everything. The borough school district is really an asset to the community out there. And I think that we will continue to benefit by a lot of these assets of the bigger government, organized government. The only thing is that if you give full powers, people never voted for a first-class member of education. We don't control us to vote. Maybe about 100 more in India. But the people of Anchorage, the whole, have never given a first-class opportunity, full powers to the borough. So if we were going to do this in a unified government, then what are the reins that control that new government from establishing any degree of power they want into that area?
Mr. Chairman.
These community councils will be the only check that would hold back full service to Indians.
Well, I think Arliss probably wants to answer to the service district concept, and I think I'll defer to her to let her answer.
The only thing I was going to say, one thing that I think it was unanimous on the part of the commission was that although it would be a home rule charter, that for the extension of any services, it would be done by a vote of the people. It does not say that the assembly of the new government could not act in perhaps a manner of creating a huge district where people really didn't get a service, but I find that hard to believe that would happen in your area. For instance, if you wish to have a service, you still would be able to form a service area and be taxed for that, but it seems somewhat difficult to think of their throwing you into an area and saying the populace vote take you on a service. I don't believe that's happened to you, has it? And that you've been forced to take services to this date that you...
So we got sewer service.
Yeah,
Waiting on a borough.
yeah.
We voted on it. I don't know what it is. But when the area, if the area as a whole votes on the power, 200 votes on the service.
No, and I think, but the point of it is it does call for at least a vote of the people. The assembly by itself cannot extend that service to you. Hopefully there'd be some reason.
Any other questions? Anyone else that would like to hear?
How was the representation that we set up?
The representation for area. We figured 4 districts passed.
Probably 2 days ago.
2 days ago, 4 districts, similar to what you have now in the borough, with 3 members from each of 3 districts and 2 members from the 4th district. So there would, and with 3-year terms. That's the way it will be presented as of now. And of course, that's subject to change from hearing input and from protest to various protests.
Well, would this district still run all the way from Portage to the road or wherever it is now?
Probably would under this system.
Well, is that a hard and fast system? Can that be changed or?
It could be changed. I'll call on Bill.
Well, I was just going to say, we're just in the tail ends of the first draft of the charter, and our schedule calls for the first draft to come out, and we go back and we have public hearings on that first draft of the charter, and we'll be in 6 different locations having public hearings, and so the second draft can easily change from what the first one was. The first one was a guideline from the 1971 charter. We used it as a guideline and took away and added to and tore apart. And so, it's really all up for grabs in the second draft. And
Why not put it in the first one?
well, we might. We're not out with the first one yet. You see, we only decided the other night to go with a multi-district plan, and I think it's fair to say it was a 7-4 vote, and
I think that's one of the gripes.
we may do something about
They
it.
don't have any representation in this area. They do, very represent this area. I think it's a good
Right.
job. And so it's a different area, it has different problems.
Mr. Chairman, Lee, one of the real problems that you would have, no matter, let's assume we go on sections, what's the population of the ARM? I think it's something like, 500 people, permanent residents? But when you get into the question of one man, one vote, you have to have a similar number for each representative. And in order for there to be a representative from your area, we would end up with, well, I hesitate to guess how large your assembly would be, possibly
30 to 40.
40 or thereabouts. And it would be an extremely difficult thing under the guidelines of the Supreme Court, which allows just, not very much deviation as to how many person that one can represent as opposed to another person. So it would be a very, very difficult thing. We will have to, on this, because of the Eagle River situation, change those lines, whether we went on a section vote or whether it went on multi-district. There will have to be a reapportionment and an opportunity for people to vote on that. But just due to your limited population, base, it would be very difficult, even with a single-member district, to really answer your problem completely.
One of the things that should be considered, people that have the same problem in an area,
You would,
people in other areas have different.
Who has the same problems you do? It's interesting.
is there anybody else that'd like to be heard or ask a question?
What is the thought on the type of government? Any reaction there? I mean, any thoughts? Would you want to
You mean...
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking now, if, assuming unification passed, no, I'm making some assumptions here, and this is just to evoke some thoughts so that we can be guided by it. But would you prefer a city manager who would report to a city council, or a city manager who would report directly to a mayor for an overall government?
Or a mayor. Or a mayor.
Right. Right. What do you see as a preferential
There are three alternatives.
form of government?
Elected mayor.
Well, there probably does.
Does- you can go on in-depth.
The most public have mentioned to us are the strong elected executive mayor who then appoints a manager who reports to him. That mayor has a veto power and is not a voting member of the assembly. And this is somewhat like the current borough. The provision that was put in on draft was that that manager would have to be approved by the assembly, but that the mayor hires and fires. The other form is essentially the council manager form. That is, the mayor is one of the number of representatives there are and votes as one of them. And the city manager or the manager of the municipality reports to that group. Those are the two main ones that we consider. And there are probably variations galore.
Such as a part-time mayor and a full-time mayor and a number of...
With veto and without
Right.
veto and
Right.
with the vote and without the vote.
Normally, when you have the separate mayor and the, what do you call it, assembly or council, the mayor frequently has veto power over the actions of the assembly, and you have somewhat of a separation of powers like you do at the state or federal level. But when you have the council manager, the mayor is just one of the guys, except if he's a full-time mayor, frequently can exert perhaps more power and effect than the other council members.
Is he elected separately then from the assembly members? He's not an assembly member, he's elected.
If it's
as-
council manager, he would be elected as a mayor,
But a member of.
but a member of the council and participate in debate and vote and so on.
Yes.
My name is Dan Zantek, and I live here for the last 10 years, and I prefer the city council manager type to the full-time mayor, just for the record.
Coming back again to what Lee was saying, which kind of bothers me a little bit. Suppose it was determined that you just can't go the single one-for-one representation that you want, but you're still going to have to go with the broad representation. Now, is multi-member district acceptable under that to the Girdwood residents?
Well, like you have now, really, like the way it is, and Mary represents your area.
Doesn't sound like they have a choice.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Suppose
I know with the Supreme Court rule.
Well, there are other variations we discussed that way too, one of which would be single-member districts, that is a smaller area and representing instead of...
Yeah, I would think that'd be preferable.
and another way would be at large.
That'd be the only chance you have in getting one member on this and turning your arm on in a district of some sort.
The other control that you have now is this community council, which is a step closer to what you want to get than we've ever had before, because if it negotiates well, a community council can get some pretty good teeth into it.
Right.
A good, strong community council can really be effective.
Now, the way it's written now, the way I understand it, is it says they may, which would be up to the discretion of whoever happens to be sitting on the assembly where at any given time. They may or they may not. But if you have it written right in this charter, then it wouldn't be up to their discretion then. They would have some input.
With a good city council, I mean, you can work around the assembly. You can go directly, you can relieve the assembly of a lot of problems. Because a good-
Well, you shouldn't have to.
Yeah, there's...
Mr. Josephson?
The language we have is mandatory.
It is mandatory.
As to the assembly. The reason the first sentence that you may have seen uses the term may, is that what you're speaking of?
Yeah, when we read.
Was
City council.
okay, was because the option is with the local community to provide its own residents for maximum community self-determination. In other words, we wanted to avoid having the assembly set the jurisdictional boundaries of those community councils. But once that interest is triggered, as I read that article, and I was disturbed by the same word you were, but if you read the whole article, once that interest is triggered at the local level, then the assembly must react.
See, it says under section 2, and you can read it, it's easier to read it than it is for me to read it to you probably, but it's under powers, it's the legislative body by ordinance shall provide for procedures to allow for the negotiation between the local government and each community council with respect to sharing of rights and powers, and may provide for each community council to supervise the furnishing of services in an area. The first section only allows you to form one if you want to or don't want to. That's why the word may is in there. But that's as I understand it.
I've been around it for a while. And I've been on the city council ever since they incorporated it in the last year. And I can't see where this community council, no laws governing them or nothing. There's no laws pertaining to it that have as much teeth as the city. And we didn't have no luck with the city.
Didn't have any luck as a city.
And we did have some luck.
You did have, what was that
We
last?
didn't have no luck with the rural.
As a city.
Just get together and say we want this, that,
You know, might explain one thing that worked out very well, and it's a possible, and we have to keep in mind that we're just putting an idea out that has to be carried out. But for instance, in the Chugiak area, it's the only place that they're doing it in the borough. They have an elected board of supervisors for their fire department. The power to tax, the power to levy a tax is still done by the borough. And yet they are given great autonomy in running it, setting their budgetary needs and, you know, what the community would come forth in taxes. Now this very thing I'm talking about here, or we're talking about, the community council, could provide for that kind of a thing. And I'm trying to be very careful not to say it will provide for it, because that has to be something that's done afterward. But it might be that that's how you would want to run, through a volunteer fire department, and provide for services. And I don't know, maybe you have different information, but I think they've been pretty happy with that out in their area.
be like that. If I was saying group, or part of the same group, would be on the council, community council. It's on the city council, so what's the difference?
Except you won't have a city. What?
Why not? Well, what would be the difference? Maybe be a little less
That's a good question, what the difference would be.
Well, the only difference is that if we do unify, there will not be, the city of Anchorage will not exist, and the city of Girdwood would not exist.
Okay, but that would be Girdwood,
Community council. But the difference, as I would see it, is that you have a directive to the assembly, the overall assembly, to consider now. If they have that directive now with the city council and they're not doing it, that's another problem.
That's the question.
That's the question. Bob?
the way I see it, the difference our situation would be legally, if we want to take away from the legal one, take the borough tax, we can get powers equal to the city of Anchorage by law. We don't choose to expend and waste all government's money by doing that because it's not that important. But I think what Connor said is that we would go from a legal status to a non-legal status.
No.
I think that's a real concern for people out here. The point that I was trying to make before on your community council over there, I think this is still too permissive. I'm not a lawyer, but I mean, if you would consider a change that community council shall be when petitioned by residents of a contiguous area of housing on whatever, then it will be done. It's not permissive. I think that permissive place is there. The other part down below, they buy or shall provide. Well, that's all right, but it doesn't say that it's mandatory that they will recognize the petition by the people or whatever. So I think we need to take that wishy-washy stuff out of it. And put it in there that they will, they shall do that. Where the area is petitioned to own it.
Bob, I'd like to comment on that. When you are allowing the people to decide what the area is, you'd like to leave it as flexible as you can. You don't know what the size of the area is that's going to want to get together to be a community council. You don't know whether it'll be say the major portion of the hillside would like to stick together, or whether they want to be 4 different community councils. And you may find, even in one area, one group that would like 2 parts of that into one, and then you might have a couple of splinter groups who'd rather have it in separate parts. So there's going to be sort of a hearing as to how the people want to be organized, and on what services they're interested in, and on what other issues that particular group is interested in. It might be for some purposes that a community council could overlap. For other purposes it couldn't. And if you make it mandatory, it doesn't allow near as much leeway either to the community councils or to the local legislative body as to how they shall decide for themselves that they really want to act. And that's what's worrying me with any more positive language than what we have.
I think the point is you want assurance that the legislative body would be responsive in setting one up.
I don't necessarily trust government.
I have to admit, I agree with you.
I think that, the Constitution of the state of Alaska is a good Constitution that is real simple and real. But, and if we can do that for a unified government, that's fine today. But it's the rules and regulations that really take off that guideline. I don't know, build that in there. Since we represent a definite minority of the area that's being close to unification, I think that generally this is a real concern for people out there because we don't want to talk about it, even though we've got a city of Jersey. And the Indians and birds, they got the good problem, but they don't want to talk about the people, or they would have organized before this. So, and we still want to be, I think, associated with Indians, but we don't necessarily want to be dominant.
We like you, but not too much.
Would it, I don't see how it can be gotten in the charter itself, Bob. Would it help if it were put in the transition phase that GERD would be recognized as a community council, and Indian would be recognized as a community council, or that the two together would be recognized as a community council? Would that help, or wouldn't it?
Well, I don't know, but it seems that typically, the concept of organizing the borough are supposed to take these things into consideration. Are you a unit that really fits the concept of the borough? So, I think that all three communities out here, Bird, Indian, and Jersey, would really fit that qualification. They could be a community council individually, or collectively, if they wanted to exist. But I see the problem that we control so little of votes that we're never going to be effective in trying to, keep the level of service down. Not to get new service, keep the level of service down. We get dog catching services in rural life. We get dog catching.
Would you call them now?
He's part of management.
It's part of management. Knows it way around.
Mr. Chairman, I wonder if Dan or Lee well, you both are members, are you not, of the Turnagain Arm Community Council? I don't know if others are. Would you like to comment whether you think that's an effective tool, say as it is now, that it might have some value? Well, well, no, we just, as a charter commission, wrote in a preliminary section, and we're coming out with the very first draft of it for comment. And we're talking, the thing that we read came from what our proposal, but you've had the Turnagain Arm Community Council now.
That would be abolished also with this new charter, is that correct?
No, all of those ordinances go into the government, and then they'll work through those things, but they become a part of it until there's an action to do away, and most of those things will go on in the new government, just, continue on.
Ms. Parker?
Say that existing community councils, and then there's a section for service areas, they will continue to exist until, like this
opportunity to form a new community council.
What I want to know is how come the community council have 18? First-class cities don't have no team.
We recognize the problem.
Hopefully it'll get in there, Dan.
We hope it'll do better.
It's real simple. If you want it to have teeth, it's going to have teeth. Really. And community council-wise, the ultimate in community councils is me, myself, and I. Because I can get along with myself, and I can call a board meeting in a hurry, and I can have all the favors say aye right away. But then we have to just go ahead and say, well, what do we have in common, and where is the physical barrier? And we talk about the mountains as being the physical barrier. Well, all right, we got Bird Hill between here and Indian and Bird Creek. So some of you brewery types over there at Indian Creek don't have anything to do with Girdwood's taxes. Well, Girdwood was invited in the community council, preliminary stage, but they had their own city council and not necessarily needing any more influence with the borough assembly or the state, so to speak. So it's not a question of diversity, but what do we have in common? What can we work toward as a common goal? And I think that's what we're looking at, is what can we do to help each other? The good old-fashioned pioneer spirit of neighbor helping neighbor. I think that's what we're looking at instead of what can keep us apart.
Well, you've looked into community councils. Do you see them as a tool to handle some of the things, the problems here of identification and some of the problems?
The whole thing for the, thank you. We could do the whole thing for, as far as the city council or anything else could do, really. Just influence the assembly as far as what the people's desires are for spending.
The dog thing.
I really think it can work. It has worked so far. It gives the people a feeling of participation in government.
I can't stand that. You don't believe it either.
What are you guys doing here?
Get that Fred Shine. He's the guy that went to telephone.
Thank you, Daniel. He's producing this guy.
I think that in any community, there's just a certain number of people that are going to be active anyway, whether it's in a unified government, or whether it's in our city government here, or whether it's in a community council. And I think as long as we have an arm where there is some means of speaking to the governing body, I think you're only going to have your certain few people that are going to be speaking anyway. So I think all we need is a channel, because if there isn't a channel, then there's no way to go, nowhere to go. You walk into the maze in Anchorage, it really is difficult to find out as an individual exactly where you're going to get the information. This is why I think the community council would be probably the answer. The other question that I have is, the community councils that are incorporated, the unified government wouldn't automatically dissolve the incorporated city council.
Community council.
Community council.
That's what Lisa was just saying.
It would not.
It would dissolve the city. It would dissolve.
She said the community council.
Oh, no.
They stay intact.
Because they do have articles of incorporation and bylaws. Of course, without they're recognized presently by the
No, but-
Greater Anchorage Area Borough.
No, but there's a transitional provision. All of the ordinances carry over.
Sure.
Anyway, so unless they were inconsistent with the charter, but in this instance, they would be specifically recognized by the charter, and they would just carry over.
And the city of Anchorage has an ordinance similar to community council.
Mr. Chairman, what is the financial support locally for the Girdwood City in terms of taxes?
1 mil.
1 mil?
3,600 a year.
Should we move? What does that do? Harvest?
Falls roads, graded roads, the fire department has built some of that money, the tennis court.
Library?
I believe so.
All that on how much? 36 cents?
1 mil. Can you beat that?
No.
What do you do? You do all right if you can get all that out of 1 mil.
All right, let's
Mr. Chairman, I was going to say, there's a lot of effort here to, not to tie the future hands, but to provide as many ways to get the people involvement. I think there's a real effort to do that. It's sometimes easier said than done. One of the things we talked about and did adopt in the draft again was for an ombudsman. You talked about going into Anchorage and not knowing where to go. Well, the legislative body, the Assembly, did set up an office. Mary could tell more about the number of requests for information that are going. They happen to have a very good young man that's handling it. But I think that is one of the problems for people in the smaller communities, just finding out where there is a voice, and possibly this ombudsman could at least point them, be a centralized point of where people go to get the kind of help that they need. And I think sometimes the problem has to be pretty big. It's just too much of a hassle to get steered in the right, or go to the right place. And maybe this is one of the small ways that could help.
There's some people that don't need any help in finding it.
Oh no, you probably wouldn't.
Then there's some people,
Yeah.
when you tell them, and they couldn't find it anyway.
That's right.
And when you tell them where, they wouldn't believe you that it's there. So, when you got it.
Is there a limited number of people on the council that would be, is it going to the area they would represent?
No, this is not set up that way. That would be dependent on what was put together with the community group. I can envision in my own interpretation of it a fairly large-sized group being represented in a community council, perhaps providing services in their given area, even for themselves, and maybe as a group sending in one person or two to the assembly to represent the group as such. Or if they felt enough about it, they could bring in the whole body. Now, again, we can't tell you flat-footedly that it's going to be this way or that at this juncture. So, and we are feeling our way with the community council provision. We think there's quite a little bit can be done with it, and it should be done with it.
In order for us to let you know we like that, we have to know more
Right.
about it.
Yeah.
And in order to know more about it, you can present it in a way that our people, that the leaders would understand enough to tell the rest of them. But when they think there is no use trying to find out because it isn't that way, then that's when it is different. If they just knew.
Well, Lisa?
I've already written down the last night that people residents about this section about what the community councils do, so I'm going to write a brief explanation about what that section means and how it can be implemented. But the way that the borough has the ordinance, the city has the ordinance set up right now is where community councils, they establish their own boundaries and they can do all sorts of things, like they can talk about things, like, go talk to the borough about different things that are going on in their area, but pretty much right now, any powers they have are advisory powers. And so, it would be much like the borough ordinance is right now, that these people would have power to implement ordinances or concerns in their own area if they so desire.
Mr. Chairman, Lisa, I think you have to be very careful not to give the impression that they may have legislative powers. That is only assuming.
They implement that the legislative body has passed, like self-control or,
But now that again depends on, and it states, very clearly that between the negotiation, but it would be done within the framework, I would think, of the legislative body setting up a plan, and there's no way of judging specifically what that body's going to do. You may hope that is it, but I think you give a false hope if you don't recognize that the assembly is going to have to talk with people and work those things out. Yeah. Well, yeah.
They have no control. Just because they put a tag on the dog, they have no control.
Sure doesn't.
I think that's one of the concern of some of us in Indian and council there, that we're a little afraid that we're going to be furnished too many services. In fact, it seems to make these ones are better.
And just why do they wish to take your garbage?
It seems that although our town is satisfactory for the citizens, it's not satisfactory for the world.
I'm afraid that the borough has been served notice by the state that it is unsatisfactory. You may not have received the notice, but I have.
They told us it looked like a dog.
That's the point. Dumpster are illegal. Control landfill is real.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Parsons?
I try and visualize myself as living in Girdwood. I'd be kind of wary if I wanted to vote for unification. You lose some of the power you have, and the alternates I see are the community council and the service area. Plus the fraction of a representative that you can get the ear of in whatever kind of apportionment there is in the total borough body.
This is about the way that I would do it right at the beginning. The first study, we had local opportunities where you get around otherwise. When we had the earthquake here and we relocated, there were a lot of different agencies talking about communities and they came down there. And the Division of Aviation had $12,000 that they could help us support their airport. They told me that they couldn't even get a survey on the ground. Well, $12,000 to give it to us. And see what we can do. We built the airport and it was beautiful. And the present plane and everything. It was all built for there's a lot of things that a small community can do, like we're operating on one bill. We may have to double the rate. There's a lot of opportunity for the people here now that if this is eroded to a unified government, and we can get our $3 million capability to the unified government, this will get lost in the pot there. I think that if we're not unified, the fire department can be equipped with water equipment at no cost to the taxpayer. First class to a little option for land. Set a lot of
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Joseph?
I don't, it's not in the spirit of arguing the point, but on the other hand, it seems to me that there are some advantages, not only the common advantage of sharing a more effective government, not in terms of size of government, but in terms of the effectiveness of the dollar spent by government, but also under the present situation, you don't have any voice at all, legislatively or administratively, for example, in the activities of the city of Anchorage, where many of you work. And it would seem to me that one of the advantages would be that in the unification, you would not only have participated legislatively in the election of an assembly person, but you would also be helping to elect the mayor, who would be responsive to you as to all citizens. And you wouldn't have the sense that I think you must have in terms of city issues, that those people would treat you just like they would treat someone from Seattle, Washington. I would think that would be a consideration.
Yes, ma'am.
If we became unified, our taxes would probably go up equal to people in other areas, or 1 mil. Would no longer be 1 mil, we would be up.
Why?
Only to pay for all the services and so forth in the whole area, as well as any services that we require specifically in this area. So that will not be any advantage to us. It would be to Anchorage.
Jane?
The present time, the Trinidad community is served by the area-wide powers that the borough has right now. They include planning, public health, and education. And the charter does not suggest in any way that any more area-wide powers should be added to the things that the government presently does. For example, the question of police protection has been raised in several communities throughout the Anchorage area. Charter will not say that police power should be an area-wide function because that should be the vote of the people. And when we've been discussing service area concept, as we've gone along, the one thing we really be careful about is that we don't shove any services down anybody's throat. So that I would not think that any more services would come to you unless you had a chance to vote on them. And that if the price you're paying right now is 1 mil to receive services from the Anchorage Borough.
No, that's their city, that's their
1 mil is the
city of Berkeley.
city. We pay them.
Sure.
Okay, but I don't see that levy rate would increase because the community is unified. Does that mean that the Anchorage service area of Anchorage would remain at their rate and would remain our service rate? Well, we're still talking, we're fighting about it among ourselves, talking, whatever. What? I really don't believe that your mill levy would go up because of additional services. Because the way we're going right now in our conversation, nobody has to have any service. People don't get a chance to vote on it.
Now, if you vote on the area-wide power, and say there's 400 people on 30 200 qualified voters, and they vote for, like they did for Doghead. Now, the people in town have a problem with dogs. I would say we don't, but there's plenty of dogs in the Doghead.
They hate you.
equal road maintenance with the other people. It doesn't come take. That's the point.
Bob?
No vote there, sir. 200 votes against 100,000.
Bob, we don't have area-wide road service. Well, Bob, we don't have area-wide road service.
I know, but if it's put on the ballot, as a proposal for area-wide service as a new unified government, now do you think Bergen's going to defeat it?
If we put it on the ballot, and I think that's the place of the community councils to come in and say, don't ever include us in an area-wide service unless we ask for it, because we are separate. And you've got to keep coming in and tell the new legislative body, don't ever include us in the area-wide services unless we ask for it.
Maybe a provision of your charter should be no area-wide power shall be assumed unless all of the various community councils separately have agreed to put this up to the vote.
Mr. Chairman, I don't see, that your situation changes. You gave the illustration of the dog control where you were outvoted under the existing system. I don't see that unification affects that very much. How does it make it worse? I mean, there is...
They only go in with the powers they got now. They're a second-class unified government outside the city.
But under our charter, it would be unchanged because the charter is specific that the additional powers would have to be voted on by the people. I mean,
If they vote,
You can't win.
but that's true now.
they can sell us anything they want, as it is now. Their chance of resisting.
How?
Well, maybe we don't have, I guess maybe we don't have a chance to resist anyway.
No, really.
Well, we can go in there as a city and yell our cats to the city or the borough center.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question that I should know the answer to? Since you're a first-class city, are you able, and have no direct representation, are you able to vote for an assembly person?
Well,
But the answer is no, is it not?
I vote on the ballot, but we
Are you?
are supposed to be a member of the planning and zoning.
No, but...
Law says
Yeah, I know there's that, and I never understood what happened and why you weren't there. We were, expecting you when you didn't come. But are you able to vote for, say, Mary Froney and so on? Yeah. Okay, so you are not barred from even though you're a...
But interestingly enough, when we voted for our charter commission members, we voted for a charter commission member within the city.
This came as a great surprise to a number of us.
The city of Anchorage.
Please me.
Which we didn't know.
We didn't know it either.
Until Jane came down to the Turnagain Arm Community Council, and she found out that night when I was reading the paper to her. Because I was reading the paper on the way out that night, and that was about 2 days before the election. And I questioned her about the fact, at that time we thought that she was included in the group of people that we would be voting for, and in fact, the outside of the
What'd you do, waste your trip down here, Jane?
Never.
Well, there's one vote.
One of the things that Douglas said should be elaborated on a little bit is that the way it is now, we are, the city of Berkeley, being worse off than we are now. But maybe what we ought to be trying to do is make it so that we're a little better off.
Good.
And that's why I think that some of this stuff has to be spelled out in ABC language right in that charter. Because if you don't get it in there, you may never have another chance to get it anywhere in here. Well, it's things just like Bob was saying, if the Turnagain Arm Community Council or whatever they call it, it's all one. And when this whole area, like Mary County's area out here, vote for something, if we want to be excluded from that vote for that service, then we don't have to vote for it. Because they can outnumber our votes in there and give a service out here that we don't want. But
fairly separate. I, for one, will sure try to figure out some way that we could allow you folks never to be included in an area-wide vote unless this area separately votes for it. I think that might be a possibility for additional
The
services.
other side of the coin, Joe Joseph again thinks that it might be great to be all unified with language, but anytime you make the government bigger, every voice is smaller.
No, but I'm not,
I'd love to say about what goes on.
I don't think you've taken,
We're doing pretty fine.
I don't think we're on opposite sides. I said that I didn't see on this matter of being outvoted how the unification issue changed that from the existing.
From what it is now.
Right. I think that's,
Great, we got a chance to vote mayor and manager.
well, I didn't think I said it was great. I've had that privilege, and I could. Hasn't meant all that much to me either. But all I'm saying is that while we were listing the advantages and disadvantages, along with what Mr. Sheffield asked us to do, that it seemed to me that for people who may work in Anchorage, the fact that there was a separate government in there that was really insulated from your control in any way was a disadvantage to you under the present system, and that the unification could remove that. That's as far as I went.
But there again, when you make it bigger, then your voice counts for less. Your individual voice.
Well, it's not bigger in the sense that at least the borough.
It will be when it's unified, it's going to be a lot bigger.
What's going to be bigger?
Government.
Oh, well, we don't. No, we don't agree to that. We do not agree to that. As for the reasons that have been expressed, that this charter will require very specifically, if we go on the track we're on, voter approval for services rendered, prohibiting the assembly from taking on additional services without voter approval. So we don't agree that unification of the borough would mean that it's larger.
Mr. Chairman?
Alice?
Just a point on it, too. The very reason that we're attempting to unify is because of some very serious problems. And a lot that we've talked about tonight is inefficiency, and bigger is not always better, and I'll grant you that. But I've sat on so many boards and commissions and seen how it operates, and the blocks that we get, having two very large governments competing for power, so in a sense so busy beating at this wall and the problems it creates, that the people problems, I think, frequently get lost in the system. And I hope that if we can bring it together and get rid of that divisiveness, that there's more time to set up structures where the people can be heard. And I think that just in order, government is called on to do so many things, that it's going to be logical to attempt to streamline that system, or it's just going to, like a big balloon, it'll collapse on us. And I truly believe that, and I think that's the reason behind the unification effort. It's not to be less responsive to people. If it is, I can't support it either.
Bob?
I recognize that energy has been wasted by two governments shopping each other. And I think this is extremely healthy. And I've thought that ever since the first suggestion, because I don't think that a little group like the city of Jersey or a bunch of people in the hillside or anything else really get much action. You know, if one local government is doing something that is really contrary to the way things should be going, the other one is big enough to really challenge. And we may waste a few $100,000 in legal fees, which I think is well spent money for the balanced power. And this has been my opinion right from the beginning. We had a man testify, I can't remember his name, but he was on the Constitutional Convention, and he testified. And I really accept his testimony that the borough concept provided for the growth of services to areas that they want. And I think that what is developed, is you've got personalities in government, this is a real problem, that don't want to lose that power. It seems very healthy if the city area is growing and you develop a borough area, a county system or whatever outside, and they get 100% level service, and they should have really, they are part of the city, they are more of the world. It's not human nature really to give away power, and that's the real problem. I think it's very healthy to keep two governments are challenging each other now. If the city council doesn't get too far ahead, whether it's a real city. But I think if you put them together, what he said was that you would eliminate a couple of jobs, you would eliminate one mayor, and you would eliminate maybe one attorney or something. And then you're going to add the street departments together, and because they're all together, you're going to add 2 or 3 mechanics, and and 2 or 3 flowers and a secretary. And really, you're going to have a bigger system then you've got to have all the 2 systems, just part of your lives. And that, I still feel that way. Real strong.
Thanks, Bob. Jane?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out when folks be involved and talk about bigger government, what that means, and you just given a very good example of what that fear is, and I'm just wondering if it's all just increased numbers of bodies working for government, or and this society of that rate for employment at the borough is close to like 12-16%, and in the city it's almost 18%. So the people are turning over their jobs fast. They don't stay there very long. And some of the things that we've talked about when we're talking about the position is that rather than having the employee number increasing, that maybe one of the things that we should really strive for is as turnover rate takes place, we just don't replace those people. And granted, the size of the borough is one thing. The size of the city is another. We put them together. They're still the same numbers, and we're still providing services. But the number of 2 is certainly bigger than 1. But I wouldn't confuse that with the idea that the whole your government right now is the borough and your own city council. And because the services that are provided through the city of Anchorage are coordinated with the borough, doesn't necessarily mean that the services that you're receiving will increase, or that the price of that will increase. We've already determined that if Bob's statements are true, that the city of Birdwood gets a lot more mileage on each dollar than would be likely possible if it would be offered on a unified basis. This would be an argument against unification. I don't know if our benefits would outweigh it or not. It's nice to be able to know that we can do a lot more good here. Who, for instance, now on unification, who would handle the road meetings down here?
You say roads?
Yes.
Well, I think there
In the city, you're not talking about LAS.
Yeah, I think there are a number of possibilities. One is that you could form yourself into a service district with limits and decide to tax yourself for a certain amount of service.
But it's been done in the same manner as the city of Curtis is now operating the whole thing? Or would money
See why not?
go to the
Central government.
unified borough and if that would
It would.
the borough would handle it correctly?
Well, I think the money would go to the, and again, I could be correct, but I believe the money would go to the central treasury and back to.
Mr. Chairman, it's possible under state law, if I'm correct, and I need an attorney, and he's not here, to contract for services. The borough would have the power to assess and collect, but if a service district were formed, say to provide that, the government could either provide it or they could contract for it being provided. So I certainly can't see but what they can contract with you to do it, and you can do it in your own efficient way. Unless it would take away from people's desire to do it, if you think there might be some change simply in the change in the structure. There shouldn't be.
So you're saying it would not necessarily be a case of us saying to the unified borough, look, we've got potholes in our road, come down and fix it.
Well, it depends how we're administered. If you want to be the ones, that's something we need to make a note and to check out. But to the best of my knowledge, there's no reason you could not contract to provide that for yourself within the service area.
The present charter, with all of the present service district or service areas of the borough still exist under the new government.
Well, that's my knowledge too.
Yes, they
Well, Mr. Chairman,
Then the thought that these would be logical areas for this council, community council. We are a service district, not a borough or sewer. So it seems like that's the same boundaries. There's the boundaries throughout the whole borough. There would be logical boundaries for the initial.
Again, I think that comes back,
for what?
back to your,
But not limited to that one service.
I think that comes back to your desires and expressed desires. If you wanted to set a community council that would service that area for other purposes than, we'll say, schools, I believe that would be your, Jane?
I'd like to ask you a question. If unification were to occur, and the city of Girdwood as a unit of government didn't exist anymore, do you think that some of the problems between people in Indian and Rainbow versus people who are city people in Girdwood would be resolved at your community council level? If it looked like it was turning an arm against Anchorage, would it be, would you think it would work better than
Trying to start a fight.
What kind of a fight's going on now, Jane? I haven't heard about that.
Well, that's what I tried to ask before. It looked like the city of Burr was going to be left out any way you cut this new charter because they're going to do away with us.
Do away with
So,
this
what other vessel would they have
Community council.
community council.
other than this community council?
That's what I can't figure where that community council is.
Okay, my question is, do you think the community council would be strengthened should unification occur? Do you think that the differences that exist at the present time would be resolved if it looked like it was this community that was our voice?
I think it would happen. We didn't have to revise this community council that now exists. They would have to create another one.
Do you think that would be good?
Well, I don't, good or bad, it's the only thing you're going to have. It's that or nothing.
I think it would be necessary necessary because the folks down here do want others. Bob, I can certainly look into it, but I think it would be possible to let you folks vote yourselves out of animal control if you folks down here don't want it.
All they wants is a catcher.
Now, you want the service.
Yeah, but they want some service.
You want the service. All right. I can see if you can occasionally get service. Now, how much do you want? Do you want them to come down and take all the dogs that they find free, or do you want them to only take the specific ones you want to get rid of?
Is there anybody else who wishes to be heard on the charter? I want to get away from dog control. Is there anyone else?
I might just add that there is a great difference here in that Girdwood and Alaska areas are a growing thing. And you have to remember that because there's land here and they can grow. The area called Bird Creek, there are, I think, 68 lots, 2.5 acres each. That's it. They're all vacant. They're all specified that way. Those people have no sewer problem, probably never will, never can grow anymore. And that's, say, 150 people, something like that number. They don't have the same problems with me.
That's right.
You cannot be, say, well, you have a council down there and all pay for the sewer. Well, you
Sure don't want to be in our sewer district.
Are you?
Yes, sir.
Keep talking about our problems. What is our problem? We don't have any problems. Just trying to force some problems on us. I've been living in Alaska ever since 1939, and I've never had anybody do anything for me. A person can't even take care of his own home. He might as well just lay down and die if he has to have somebody else tell him how to run it.
You want less
That's
government.
if you're out in the country. That's what the reason people move out in the country. They don't need a big bunch of government out in the country.
That's why it's stuck down, because they don't need street lights, they don't need police protection.
I live in town too.
The only thing that I really need now is some sort of garbage collection. And I have a truck, I'll take that to town.
Don't take it to town, he says.
There was a,
Josephson?
I inferred that someone thought that the community council would have to be equivalent in boundaries to, say, a sewer district. There is no such necessary connection. No. I mean, you could be part of the same community council without assuming the cost of the local service.
Well, you know, we're really here at the draft stage, and this will be out. I hope that you'll look at it and comment. You know, we won't be able to solve all the problems of government, but there are things we're trying to do to make it better and to allow an opportunity for people to be involved somewhat in what happens to them. And those are the things we're looking for, and we wouldn't be here if we didn't care. We don't know all the answers, but we'd like your comments on those.
If you,
Go ahead, Senator. I was just going to say, I think it just could be a very basic difference in philosophy of government employees and who is the government. I feel that through taxes, being a type of a private enterprise, that I put out a few bucks in taxes. And when I look at government, I look at government to serve me and my purposes efficiently. And sometimes people, when they work for the government, they might look at it just a little bit different. Now, I'm not too sure, but I just think that there might be just a difference in the way. And for some reason or other, I still maintain the private enterprise system can be more efficient because you either do it or you die. You don't just keep building a bigger and bigger bureaucracy. You check. So if you don't work, you don't get paid. You know, none of all this sick leave and all this vacations and all that stuff. You know? If I work, I get paid. If I don't work, I don't. It's just that simple. So it could be something in there about some just very basic philosophical, perhaps a primitive fear of the unknown.
Well, we certainly would like to have any comments that you might want to make on paper. We've taken this on tape this evening, and it will be transcribed, but we would like to have any, if you sit down and think something out after the discussion tonight, and say, I should have said, let's put it down on paper and give it to us at 529 I Street, Maine.